What's going on, everybody? Okay, here. We've been talking about characters that people agree to be top tier or very strong and agree to be on the weaker side. Let's look at a character that is not really agreed upon where they are. That character is going to be Goldlewis Dickinson. So Goldlewis Dickinson is a little bit under the radar, and his overwhelming offense is definitely a fan favorite at big tournaments. But is it mostly because he's like underrated or he's not represented a lot? Let's dig into it a little bit. As usual when we do this, I want to look at the pros and cons of the character, starting with the cons, because most of the time in fighting games, when you think of big body characters, which he clearly is, I mean, not only is he just huge compared to other characters, he's also described as a power type character by the game. So cons, first would be his mobility issues. Baiken has a higher jump than most characters, but his jump is relatively low and he falls quite quickly. He also cannot double jump. His jump is also slower compared to other characters, which is pretty standard for the big body characters. His jump is at 5 frame startup and you really do feel it when he's jumping, where the standard character is at 4 frames. On top of that, he has a short jump arc. So you look at Baiken here, she's able to clear some distance with her normal jump. But you'll notice that Goldlewis's is much shorter. Even dashing doesn't change it too much, where Baiken is able to clear quite a distance. Then there's his defense. So he has quite a few problems with his defense. So starting with his crouching normals, so 2K is like his long reaching low that you can use to mash. However, it is pretty slow at 8 frames. So 2P tends to be the normal that you want to use, but in comparison to 2K, which is pretty far, his 2P does not even reach anywhere near the same amount of distance. While this move does have use as an anti-air, it makes fighting against grounded opponents on defense pretty difficult. 5P is not really an option either. It both whiffs crouch rules, it whiffs some standards as well, and at 7 frames, it's not the fastest button you could pick. His 6P is not much better either. Sometimes it's good to use 6P on defense to get out of certain situations. Goldlewis's 6P hits extremely high, which does have some unique benefits on its own. Again, from a neutral perspective, on defense it is extremely difficult to use this move. A combination of it being pretty slow and it hitting higher than normal makes it hard to use defensively. His reversal super is also slow. So this move is 10 frames, so the fastest reversals in the game are 9 frames. So because his super is actually slower, there are examples like this, where the super would not connect, where a 9 frame reversal would actually connect there. These defensive things, plus him not being able to move very quickly between like his run not being super fast until he's actually moving, his low jump arc, can't double jump, makes it kind of hard for him to get out of defensive situations where people have his back to the wall. What he's best at is generally having this space and gambling here. If someone's kind of playing a little bit outside this range, it's really easy to keep him in like a box. That being said though, those are his main cons, so let's look at the pros of this character. So one is definitely damage. I'm sure you've seen clips of him getting certain counter hit starters like counter hit 268 into massive damage. He's able to two-touch characters pretty reliably. Then 2, everything he does leads into a hard knockdown. This is pretty privileged in this game. Let's say you're mashing on defense. When you mash, you just get your hard knockdown. When you hit characters with your special moves and security levels, you get a hard knockdown. Everything he does leads into a hard knockdown. There's some cases with classic Guilty Gear characters like Milia, where usually you don't get to confirm off your 4 hits unless it's a counter hit or something. So either you just don't get a combo at all, or you might get like a little combo into a soft knockdown, which lets you just pull up and melee them. With Goldlewis, everything either gives you a little setup, or a stronger setup with the drone. Then his resource is passive, so he doesn't have to actually do anything to build resource. If you look at the gauge fill here, going from 1 to 2 is pretty quick, going from 2 to 3 is a little bit slower, but the main point is that it just builds passively. Like he doesn't actually do anything. It's always building until you decide to use it, and then it just starts filling up again very quickly. So this is strong because you don't have to do anything specifically to manage the resource. It basically just fills up, and when you feel like using it, you just do it. So a lot of people feel like characters like Nagoriyuki barely have any resource management, but they do have to aim for specific things, and they have guessing games around specific moves for them to regain meter, and when are they going to spend the meter, where his is just very black and white. It's just like, I want to use the move, has it filled up yet, yes or no. This also means he could just play the game normally without having to really worry about building the resource. It's just there all the time. Then for the next point, just like the United States, for him, the best defense is a good offense. He is probably the best example of a character in this game that has one of my least favorite mechanics in the game, the guard crush mechanic. So this mechanic has changed a bit since the game came out. Essentially, the idea is that there's a special animation on this move when you block it. So notice how Milia is like reeling back here, where normally the character puts their hands up or something. They do something defensive to protect themselves. So this does a couple things. So one, as opposed to blocking a normal attack, guard crush attacks deal chip damage. And then two, as I talked about before in the Potemkin video, there's no throw protection right here. So even if I use a plus on block move, so whatever move I use, I'm not going to be able to throw Milia. I'm always going to get countered. Where if I use a guard crush move, I am able to throw her because she has no throw protection. So she'll have to pick something else like backdashing or jumping or teching the throw. Since guard crushes aren't normal attacks, you can't do things like yellow roam and cancel it. So here's normal attacks where a guard crush attack, you cannot yellow roam and cancel. You can, however, use passive system mechanics like faultless defense, instant block plus faultless defense. So because of the chip damage, if you don't use faultless defense to negate the chip damage, you have the potential to build strings like this where you deal chip damage on each one and you have advantage. Of course, it's not like an optimal string. I just wanted to show how much damage was possible if someone didn't try to interact with it in some way. You have the potential to build strings like this, where you deal chip damage on each one and you have advantage. Of course, it's not like an optimal string. I just wanted to show how much damage was possible if someone didn't try to interact with it in some way. So, he's able to use Guard Crush to have strong offense with advantage and strong mix-ups while threatening chip damage, making you feel like you have to act. And if you act in the wrong spot, you have to revisit point number 1, where you're going to take a ton of damage. Revisiting a previous point from other heavy characters, most characters in the game only have 4 or 5 frame invincible backdashes. So Nago's last hit of Far Slash, being 6 frames active, will hit almost everybody's backdash, where Goldlewis has the heavy backdash. So he's able to backdash out of things that other characters cannot. Now, despite him having a low jump and not a good far jump arc, so this kind of makes it harder to play at farther ranges. However, because of it, he actually makes mid-range rather difficult to play. So most characters would have problems dealing with this at this range, but if you think that, oh, this Far Slash is minus, when you're in this range, you can effectively treat his jump D as a poke because he doesn't jump very high and he's able to attack really quickly. This makes it so that characters generally have to fight him from further ranges than they'd be used to, and standard mid-range options won't apply to him. And speaking of standard mid-range options, this circles us back to our last point. It kind of relates to the point about his gauge. His security gauge options are both potentially game enders if you consider how strong his offense is once he gets on top of you. So the one is drone. So while the properties differ by level, the higher the level, the more hits, the more travel distance. The last one is particularly nasty because it goes further than full screen. Something like this. And it knocks down on hit as well. And on top of that, even if he gets hit, it continues to move. Something that's really, really, really uncommon in fighting games today. Like the other big bodies in this game, he has anti-zoning tools, the drone being a very, very strong one. The other strong one is the gun. So you could use this both for combos and for anti-zoning. It's a ton of hits. And again, it leads into a hard knockdown. Give you generous amounts of time to reach the opponent. So all these things together, the game describes him as a power type character, but I would say he's an extremely strong one chance character in a different way than Nagoriyuki. So Nagoriyuki is generally described as one shot in the game, but essentially he's just a juiced up strike throw character whose main threat is how safe he's able to attack in neutral and the fact that he can convert off everything. Goldlewis can pretty much convert off everything also, but he's not restricted by gauge like Nagoriyuki. Usually the matchups that are considered bad or difficult for Nagoriyuki are ones that once he reaches a high blood level, he's not able to play as freely around the screen and can be kind of kept out in neutral, where Goldlewis doesn't have that problem. The way the drone works too makes it so that it is a very, very powerful burst option. Some characters don't have stuff for when they burst you off them. For example, if Baiken bursts, there's not really much that she can do right away from full screen, where this is an immediate momentum changer. This, combined with the strength of his offense and mix-up and damage, means that his threat level is much higher than the previous patch. Despite that, though, opinions on how good he is kind of varied. So recently I've been hearing some people saying he's like a top 6-ish. I'm kind of moving in that lane myself. But other people still think he's kind of just high tier with characters like Testament and Jacko. Just like those DLC characters, Baiken included, to be honest, he doesn't have a ton of good results. But unlike Testament, Baiken, and Jacko, I feel like there's more people that actually play him in tournament. So we'll see how that ends up. As usual, if you guys have any questions or comments, definitely feel free to leave them in the comment section below. Like and subscribe if you guys feel like it. And I'll see y'all next time. Peace out.